Is that the amendments be disagreed to, and I call the honourable member for Higgins.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. An Ipsos poll from last year found that in Australia, doctors are rated as the most trustworthy professionals, followed by scientists and teachers. You all know where this is going. At the bottom of the league table sit politicians who beat bankers and marketeers for the last spot. It is some irony, then, that I have left the most trusted profession for one that is least trusted, and yet the people of Higgins put me here in part because I came from that sphere, and that's because integrity matters. Politicians consistently languish at the bottom of the trust index because for too long they have gotten away with bad behaviour, the misuse of power for personal gain. The misuse of public funds reached a crescendo and the trust deficit bottomed out in the last government. From sports rorts, car park rorts, also known as the $3 billion Urban Congestion Fund, the Leppington Triangle, regional rorts, $200 million, pool rorts, whereas Sydney Pool received $10 million from a $150 million fund meant for regional communities. And then there was the Blind Trust, a secret deal with a colleague to garner support for climate action with a cheque of around $2 billion underwritten by the Australian people without their consent, $444 million to a little-known private foundation called the Great Barrier Reef Authority, who had 6 staff at the time and coincidentally also had links to resources companies. The disregard of legal caution around robo-debt, the whole dirty saga culminating in the Ministry's miniseries of the former PM who saw Australia go down a slippery slope from democracy towards autocracy. It always starts small and then it snowballs. The list is by no means exhaustive. I reckon it's the tip of an iceberg. So did my constituents from South Yarra, Windsor, Prahran, Toorak, Armidale, Kooyong, Malvern, Malvern East, Glen Iris, Murrumbeena, Ashburton, Carnegie and Ormond. They all wanted action on integrity. They have had enough of the colour-coded spreadsheets, excuses, doublespeak, smirks and the shirking of responsibility. They understand that corruption is corrosive, a denial of resources to those in need, like the footy kids in my electorate who need decent sports change rooms, or our First Peoples who live in squalor. They understand that nepotism and handouts is bad for the economy because it distorts the free market, and yet it escalated under those opposite because there were no repercussions. The NAC is the cornerstone of the Albanese government's overarching integrity agenda. It will be a legacy reform and a key election commitment that, unlike the previous government, we are actually delivering. It will have the following features crafted in collaboration, as is the hallmark of our government, with eminent legal and integrity experts. It will have all the powers of a standing royal commission, broad jurisdiction to investigate anyone, from a minister down to a staffer, a contractor or an agency. It will be independent, with commissioners held at arm's length from government, overseen by a multi-partisan Joint Parliamentary Committee of 12 members, as well as an inspector. The Commission will be able to initiate investigations on their own steam in response to referrals from anyone. It will have retrospective powers because corruption is like a web. You don't know where or how far it goes until you start digging. It will have public hearings held in exceptional circumstances where it is in the public's interest to do so. I know that this has been a point of contention, but I draw upon the most trusted profession, doctors, as a benchmark. Investigating misconduct amongst doctors is held behind closed doors by the regulator, and yet trust levels and quality have been maintained. This provision will mitigate against undue reputational harm while protecting the welfare and well-being of parliamentarians or their staffers. Elected representatives have families. We live in communities, and I never want to see anyone here harmed or self-harm. Am I being too precious? I don't think so. Once someone is harmed or dies, it is too late for hand-wringing. We also want to avoid compromising any future criminal trials. We think we have the settings right here, balancing the benefits of holding public hearings against potential negative impacts. And as a doctor, I never want to see suicide or attempted suicide in anyone in this House. I have seen enough of that in my career. Search or surveillance warrants will be issued by judges, not politicised organisations stacked with cronies. The NAC will be properly funded, providing $90 million more than the former government committed, allowing for approximately 260 staff, and that budget will be reviewed by a joint parliamentary committee every 3 years to ensure the NAC is appropriately funded. The Commission will undertake educational activities as part of its preventative work. It will have safeguards to protect journalists and their sources. For too long, the media have been the default anti-corruption body in Australia, with influence but with no real teeth. Whistleblowers will be dealt with by protecting them from adverse consequences, including criminal offences, but protections will be strengthened through other legislation off the back of the unfulfilled Moss review from many years ago. I was nothing as a doctor without trust. The same can be said for our leaders. Trust is foundational to the social contract between leaders and the people. Like doctors, we in this House are nothing without it. Fortunately, in this election, the Australian people renovated this House by letting the sunlight in. All I want for Christmas is a NAC with teeth and reach. It will be a gift from the Albanese government to the Australian people under the Christmas tree. But unlike a lot of presents that are going to be given this year, this one will keep giving for generations to come. I commend this bill to the House.